Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so our sources today, they lay out this really, staggering claim. The idea that, the path for 8 billion people across the globe, it's not random. It's supposedly being strategically managed.
Yeah, managed by this really small, highly coordinated elite group.
And the number they often give in the sources is tiny, right? Like maybe 10,000 individuals.
It's almost nothing compared to 8 billion, which, immediately makes you ask, how?
Exactly how? How could a group that small actually maintain control over, well, the entire human operating system, as they put it?
So that's our mission today. We're going to do a deep dive into the specific framework the sources claim they use.
Which involves something called systems science.
That's right. And this coordination method they apparently employ, it's labeled swarm intelligence.
Okay, the swarm. Let's unpack that. But maybe before we get into the mechanics, the how. We need the why.
Right. What's the ultimate goal?
Yeah, what's the singular driving objective, the thing that guides every policy, every investment, all the propaganda they supposedly feed into the system?
Well, the sources are pretty blunt about it. It boils down to 3 things.
Power, profit, and control.
Power, profit, and control. That's the fixed North Star for everything else they allegedly do.
Okay, so this swarm, this group of maybe 10,000 people, what makes them a swarm?
Well, the key thing, according to this analysis, is how tightly knit and interconnected they are. They don't operate in isolation, like different government departments might.
Not like the general population, which the sources point out is often divided, fighting amongst itself.
Exactly. The swarm operates with what's called swarm intelligence. Think of a huge flock of birds or a school of fish.
They move together almost like one entity.
Precisely. The source material describes them as being almost functionally telepathic. Not literally, of course.
But because they share the same goal, the same data, the same methods.
Right. They're all on the same page, working towards that power, profit, and control.
And the shared method you mentioned is rooted in system science. So for people maybe not familiar with that term, the source is saying these elites don't see the world as, say, a collection of democracies.
No, not primarily. They view the global population more like a massive control system.
Like something from engineering or cybernetics.
That's the core idea, yeah. Think about your home thermostat, right? Simple control system.
Okay.
So in this model, the swarm is the controller, their goal. To keep the temperature steady, that temperature being their state of power, profit, and control.
So they're constantly watching the system, the output.
Constantly monitoring.
Yeah.
And then they make adjustments, the inputs, to keep everything locked into that desired state.
They're adjusting the global thermostat, basically. Controlling the state of the human population.
That's the analogy the sources use, yeah.
Okay, so if they're treating us, the 8 billion, like a system they control, there must have ways to check if it's working, like sensors, right?
Exactly. They need to measure the outputs to see if the temperature is right where they want it.
And the sources get specific about these outputs. What metrics show them they're succeeding?
They do. The material details 4 key metrics, 4 desired states for the population.
All right, what's the first one?
The first is helplessness and dependence.
Meaning
the ideal state for them is a population that feels disorganized, that feels like it just can't solve its own problems.
And so they look outward.
They look outward, often to elite figures, the figures the source actually calls the enemy, for salvation, for leadership, dependence.
Okay, that's one. What's number 2?
Division and disconnection.
That seems straightforward. Keep people fighting each other.
Pretty much. If the population is isolated, if they're constantly bickering internally, socially, politically, culturally, they can't unite.
They can't challenge the controllers.
Right. This metric confirms that the energy of the 8 billion is, successfully turned inwards against itself instead of towards the swarm.
Makes sense. Metric number 3.
This one's maybe the most jarring. Dysfunction and disease.
Dysfunction and disease? How so?
The sources use some pretty stark language. They say the population needs to be kept fat, meaning unhealthy, and dumb, meaning ignorant.
Wow.
They want to see chronic conditions, things like cancer, endocrine disruption. They want those to increase.
Increase? Why?
It gets worse. The analysis includes this really startling note. It says the elites observe things like life expectancy going down, say, in the U.S. And, quoting the source here, they like this.
They like declining life expectancy.
Apparently.
Nah.
It confirms their systems are working to, degrade the underlying health and vitality of the population. It serves the profit goal and the control goal.
That's chilling. Okay, what's the 4th and final output?
Ignorance and entertainment.
Dumb and happy.
Essentially, yes. Keep the population dumb, ignorant of the real systems at play, but simultaneously keep them happy, or at least distracted, with constant entertainment.
So the entertainment acts like a smokescreen.
It's the distraction. It ensures those first three outputs, the disease, the division, the dependence.
If you achieve all those at once, you create a population that's basically too sick, too busy fighting itself, and too dependent to ever really look up and question who's controlling the thermostat.
That fusion right there, that's the core strategy the source material outlines. That combined output confirms the system is, from their perspective, working perfectly.
Okay, so we understand the goal, power, profit, control, and the desired state of the population. But how? How do just 10,000 people scattered globally actually coordinate all this?
Well, this is where the structure of the architecture of the swarm comes in. The sources describe this extremely tight, interconnected network.
This is the swarm intelligence in action.
Exactly. It's the structural glue. They don't rely on, sending out formal memos or making public announcements to coordinate.
So how does it work?
It works through shared social infrastructure. People, personnel, they constantly shuffle between different key sectors.
Like musical chairs at the highest level.
Sort of, yeah. You'll see a former, say, CIA operative become a university dean, or a top central banker moves to run a major NGO.
They all know each other.
They attend the same elite gatherings, the same parties, the same forums like Davos. They share that singular, unified objective we talked about: power, profit, and control.
So it's less about specific secret meetings every Tuesday.
Right.
And more about a shared worldview, shared background, shared goals, creating this kind of automatic consensus.
It creates a sort of closed loop, yeah. Policy consensus is often reached within this network before any real public debate even starts.
And this network spans all the major pillars of society.
Every pillar needed to execute that unified goal, yes.
Okay, let's break that down. The sources list a lot of names and organizations. Can we group them into, functional sectors, starting with maybe where the ideas come from?
Good idea. First up, academia. The sources point to the leadership, the presidents, of top universities. Harvard, Yale, MIT are named. This is supposedly where ideology gets generated, refined, and where personnel are groomed.
Okay, academia.
Then you have the NGOs. Think of the big global nonprofits. The World Economic Forum, the Clinton Global Initiative are mentioned specifically. These help establish and, importantly, legitimize the global policy narratives.
Setting the agenda. What's next?
Government and intelligence. This includes, high-level figures like U.S. senators, key advisors, the CIA itself.
And think tanks, too.
Yes, so the think tanks get called out. Places like the Stanford Internet Observatory or the Belfer Center at Harvard. The source actually alleges these were instrumental in creating the modern censorship infrastructure for information control.
Wow. Okay. Academia, NGOs, government intel. What about the money? The profit part?
Right. The engine of profit and investment. This is crucial. We're talking central banks like the Fed, huge financial firms, JP Morgan, Deutsche Bank are listed.
And big corporations.
Absolutely. Big pharma, with Pfizer named as an example, and big agriculture, mentioning Syngenta. These generate the massive profits that, validate the whole system for them.
And finally, the control aspect. How do they manage perception?
That's the engine of culture and media. This is the ultimate control mechanism, according to the source.
So Hollywood.
Hollywood, yeah. Massive media conglomerates like Disney, Viacom, news outlets too. CNN and Fox are both mentioned.
Both sides. Interesting.
And critically, the sources claim this control extends even to social media influencers.
How so?
They're described as influencers who are allegedly created and supported by the swarm, specifically to deliver their preferred narratives, their inputs, directly to the masses.
So you put all that together. Academia shaping ideas, NGOs legitimizing them, government implementing policy, finance profiting, and media controlling the story.
That's the alleged coordination network. And it's through this network that the specific inputs, the policies, the propaganda are generated and deployed.
Deployed to intentionally create that state of dysfunction we talked about.
Intentionally create dysfunction among the 8 billion, yes, all while protecting their own massive investments, often trillions of dollars.
Okay, let's dig into those inputs then. The source gives a really stark example with health, using this phrase, policy to biology.
Yes, the policy to biology model. It's presented as a prime example of using systemic dysfunction for profit.
How does that work in the health context?
Well, it starts with an input. Policies. These policies, supposedly driven by big ag and the investment sector, actively promote things like sugars, high fructose corn syrup in the food supply.
Okay, so that's the policy input.
Right, and that policy leads directly to a predictable biological output, skyrocketing rates of obesity in the general population.
But then instead of saying, uh-oh, let's fix the policy.
No, the system as described is set up to profit from that dysfunction.
How?
That obesity output creates a huge market. We're talking multi-trillion-dollar opportunities for big pharma.
Selling obesity drugs, diabetes treatments, all that.
Exactly. Selling treatments for the consequences of the initial policy. But it doesn't stop there.
There's more.
Then the culture and media part of the swarm kicks in. Think Netflix shows, Amazon content, fashion campaigns. They start promoting narratives that normalize obesity.
Yeah.
Fat people as a norm.
Why would they do that?
To drive the division metric. It creates these manufactured conflicts, pro-fat versus anti-fat groups.
Ah, so people end up arguing about lifestyle choices.
Instead of looking at the policies that caused the biological issue in the first place. Keeps everyone distracted, divided, and keeps the profits flowing.
That's quite a loop. It shows coordination, definitely. But the sources claim it goes even deeper, right? Into manipulating social and even sexual divisions.
It does. This is where it gets really complex, according to the analysis. They trace it back to a specific origin point.
Which is?
The widespread use of certain restricted-use pesticides, like atrazine. Companies like Syngenta, part of that big ag sector, manufacture these.
And what's the problem with atrazine?
Well, the source points to research linking chemicals like this to endocrine disruption in the population. Things like reduced male testosterone, other sexual changes.
Okay, so that's a huge potential problem for those companies. A public health issue, a massive corporate liability.
Exactly. So the swarm, as the source claims, faces the choice. Do they address the chemical costs, potentially costing big ag and big pharma trillions, or do they use their control system to manage the perception of the biological effects?
How could they even do that? This seems incredibly complex.
This is where the control element, media, culture, influencers, becomes absolutely critical. To protect those trillions in chemical and pharma investments, the claim is they coordinate marketing and cultural campaigns.
Using who? Or what?
The sources name specific examples, like campaigns involving Bud Light, Target, sometimes using particular figures like Dylan Mulvaney is mentioned as kind of poster person.
To do what, exactly?
To normalize the results of that endocrine disruption. To normalize the sexual and gender fluidity that might arise from it.
Wait, hang on. You're saying the source claims these big corporate woke campaigns, they aren't necessarily about genuine progressive ideals.
According to this analysis, no. It's presented as a calculated, cynical strategy. A kind of policy triage.
Triage?
Protects the core investments in chemicals and pharmaceuticals by changing the cultural conversation around the symptoms. Make the symptoms seem normal, even desirable.
So the public gets distracted.
The public gets completely distracted, fighting each other. You see the pro-woke versus anti-woke battles, the boycotts, the arguments over apps and books.
While the real issue, the alleged chemical cause, gets ignored.
Completely ignored. And the investment sector. They actually profit from both sides. They profit from the underlying chemical sales, and they profit from the marketing frenzy and the division it creates.
So it hits all the goals. Division achieved, profit secured, control maintained. People are fighting the symptom, never the policy.
That's the mechanism the source alleges is at play, simultaneously achieving all key objectives.
This intentional misdirection, getting people to fight symptoms, it leads perfectly into the second major input strategy the sources talk about.
Right, the deployment of what they call false heroes.
False heroes, who are they?
The source identifies these figures as the not-so-obvious establishment. They're described in pretty harsh terms, actually, as the most insidious people involved.
Why insidious?
Because they're the front men. They often talk a big game, about fighting the system, changing things, taking on the elites.
But their real function in this model is different.
Critically different. Their true function, according to the source, is to ensure the public keeps looking up to elites for salvation, even if those elites seem critical of the other elites.
So by focusing hope on these charismatic figures,
people outsource their future, their energy, their hope. They're actively discouraged from taking initiative themselves, from organizing in their own communities, from becoming leaders from below.
Because they're waiting for the hero to save them?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that maintains that crucial desired output, helplessness and dependence.
The source is pretty specific about this systemic function, right? Regardless of how we might personally view these figures.
Yes, the analysis is about their role in the system. They are claimed to be essentially endorsed or at least tolerated by the swarm because they fulfill this function of keeping the public dependent on an external savior.
And the sources don't shy away from naming names, do they? Figures they claim fall into this false hero category.
No, they list quite a few. It includes current political figures, Trump is mentioned, with specific details noted like the golden toilet or Mar-a-Lago, perhaps to emphasize a connection to elite status, despite the rhetoric.
Others.
The Kennedys are also named, described quite bluntly in the source as a completely bogus family in terms of systemic change, just replacing one form of dependency with another.
It's not just contemporary politicians, though.
No, the list extends to modern tech figures like Elon Musk.
And even historical icons.
Yes, and this is where it might feel quite challenging for some. Highly revered figures like Gandhi and Martin Luther King Jr. are included in this analysis.
Now, just to be absolutely clear, we aren't endorsing this view.
Absolutely not. We're reporting what the source material claims.
And the claim is about their systemic role.
Precisely. The source analyzes their function in, allegedly, maintaining that pattern of looking for external saviors, looking for solutions from above, which ultimately reinforces the status quo of helplessness for the broader population. That's the core argument presented.
Okay. So let's try to pull this all together. For you, the listener, what's the big picture takeaway here?
Well, the overarching claim is pretty profound. It's that the entire global system, everything from, the quality of the food you eat to the political fights you see, the social divisions,
All of it
is allegedly intentionally designed using this system science framework we've been talking about.
designed to constantly produce those specific states. Disease, division, dependence.
Right. Produced through these carefully controlled inputs, policies, propaganda, cultural narratives, even false heroes.
And the swarm's ability to control the 8 billion, it really hinges on us, the population.
On us outsourcing our future, giving our energy, our hope, to these charismatic figures, these supposed saviors.
And focusing all our attention on fighting the symptoms.
Exactly. Fighting over woke versus anti-woke campaigns, arguing if Trump or Kennedy or Musk is the answer.
Yeah.
Getting caught up in the drama.
Instead of looking deeper.
Instead of understanding and addressing the fundamental systems science framework itself. The policies, the inputs, the outputs, the actual mechanics governing our lives.
So if the system is designed, as the source claims, to keep us looking up, always waiting for a savior, what's the alternative? What's the counter strategy?
Well, according to the source material, the path forward is basically the direct opposite of the swarm's input strategy. Meaning, stop looking for saviors from above. Stop pouring all your energy into the national political theater, the drama.
And instead
focus on mastering the science of systems yourself. Understand the inputs and outputs in your own life, your own community, and critically, become a leader from below. Start organizing. Start solving problems locally, within your own sphere of influence.
shift the focus from fighting the symptoms to actually understanding and maybe changing the system itself.
That's the ultimate challenge, the final provocative thought presented by this source material. Can individuals shift from being passive outputs of the system to active participants in redesigning it, starting from the ground up?